Just for the record,
they were
you're flat
overly
calling
aggressive.
them a murderer. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that they look like they murdered those people in cold blood in broad daylight.
They murdered her. Is that right?
Hey, I'll say it. It looked like those agents murdered those innocent American citizens in our streets. And there's a way to do immigration enforcement without all of this chaos, without all of this violence.
The MAGA commentator Scott Jennings was back on Abby Phillips' show, and once again, his appearance felt less like a genuine discussion and more like a carefully framed defense of his side, this time during a heated debate about ICE. In this video, we're going through several clips from the panel featuring Scott Jennings and the other guests on Abby Phillips' show, looking closely at what was said and what the arguments really revealed. I'll also give my take throughout the discussion and break down the key moments so we can see exactly how this debate unfolded.
New video shows a federal agent pointing a gun in a woman's face after he claimed she tried to run him over. The encounter happened on Monday in Northern Virginia as Carolina Molina, an American citizen and a licensed counselor, was visiting immigration lawyers. Molina says she saw agents walking two Latino men in handcuffs towards an unmarked vehicle, leading to this confrontation.
Yeah, you recorded us. You almost ran us over.
I didn't almost
You
run
almost
you over.
ran us over.
You're
Stop
so
playing.
full of
Stop playing.
You are full of
You're not funny.
You're not funny.
I will arrest you. Keep it up.
I'm a legal citizen.
Keep it up. I don't care.
Oh my goodness.
Keep it up. Lock you up.
Okay. For what?
The one that tried to run us over.
Run you over when? I got recording. I got dash cam. That's a lie.
As DHS faces criticism over its use of force and its credibility, ICE now plans to spend $20 million on gloves that can deliver electric shocks to compel compliance. Josh, this is near where you live. We've seen a lot of these types of videos, and I think what a lot of law enforcement has said when they watch this is you are seeing this agent, and of course we don't know the full context of this, what happened before this video was taken, but we see him exit the vehicle with his gun, pointing it in the face of Carolina Molina. What does this say to you?
Right. To be fair, I just moved to this neighborhood yesterday, but I do live 5 minutes from where this happened as of yesterday. And a lot of things went wrong there. He's pointing a gun at someone's face. He clearly is threatening the person. The justification that he used was, you tried to run me over, was the exact same justification that ICE agents used, in that case falsely, before they shot Renee Good to death in Minnesota. So that's not an idle threat. That's not a random thing to say, you were about to run me over. That's clearly a threat against this driver. And that's scary. That's thuggish. That's, in my view, un-American. And, you know, there are a lot of societies where they have mass secret police that point guns in people's faces, despite the fact they've done nothing unlawful. And that's not how this country was designed. And I don't think that's how this country will end up. But that video shows that actually the truth will win out. I think there's plenty of video to show that what the ICE agent was saying was not true. And until more evidence emerges, I think that's the preponderance of the evidence. And I immediately bought 2 dash cams for our cars as soon as I saw that video. And because I live in that neighborhood now, and God forbid me or my family members should be in that situation, I want to make sure everything is documented. And it's sad that we live in a society where that's necessary, but here we are.
Scott?
Well, I don't think we've seen near enough to pass judgment on it one way or the other. I think in all these instances, and I don't know whether this is true here, body cam footage from the point of view of the officer would be useful. That would show you the entire encounter, and then you could maybe pass some kind of reasonable judgment on it. I know they're trying to deploy those, but to me, that's one thing here that would be helpful in almost all these cases. You get a, A to Z video of the entire encounter. I do find it strange. We see people showing up, they're in their cars, and they're somehow in very, very close proximity to people.
You're allowed to take the police. You're allowed to take law enforcement.
I know, but you're not allowed to threaten them with a vehicle.
There's no evidence that happened. And you would have to ignore all of what happened in the last 18 months.
You would have to ignore the fact that we have seen a massive spike in violent acts committed against ICE and other federal law enforcement. These guys wearing the badge and enforcing our laws feel like their lives are under threat every day.
There's a real good answer to that, which is that they should operate under regular rules of transparency and rule of law that every single other law enforcement agent in the country has operated in since the time immemorial. Well, and they don't do that.
They're facing an environment and rhetoric. They're facing an environment and rhetoric from Democrat politicians in this country that have put a target on their backs.
To set up an army of mass thugs roaming the streets and rounding people up and then blaming people for reacting it is just gaslighting.
Riddle me this. Obama was able to deport more than 3 million people without all of this chaos, without having to give agents these shock gloves and there were murders of American citizens in our streets. And he was able to do it. So it seems like there can be immigration enforcement.
What murders are you talking about?
We're talking about Renee Good, Alex Preddy.
Have there been convicted murders in these cases?
We've seen the video evidence, which shows a very...
So just for the record,
they were
you're flat
overly
calling
aggressive.
them a murderer. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that they look like they murdered those people in cold blood in broad daylight.
They murdered her, is that right?
Hey, I'll say it. It looked like those agents murdered those innocent American citizens in our streets. And there's a way to do immigration enforcement without all of this chaos, without all of this violence.
If people would
Obama
interfere
showed
with
us
law
that it's
enforcement,
possible.
there wouldn't be chaos. No one was
But why then are mass agents going into communities and terrorizing them? And
I agree with you that Barack Obama was able to deport millions upon millions of people. The difference is now the Democratic Party has changed. Back then, I guess they were fine with it. Today, they instruct people to go interfere with federal law enforcement.
That's not actually true. I think the culture.
I want to pause here for a moment before we get to bakery sellers, because I really wish CNN and other major networks would fact-check people like Scott Jennings in real time instead of simply letting these claims go unchallenged. We hear this same argument all the time when the discussion involves regular police officers, especially after a police shooting, with people saying that being a police officer is one of the most dangerous jobs, that their main goal is simply to make it home safely, and that officers have never faced more danger than they do today. But when you actually look at the statistics, the picture is much more complicated, and law enforcement is operating in an era that is among the safest in American history. The same basic argument applies to ICE. Scott Jennings is talking about all these serious threats against ICE agents, but I did a quick search and checked the official U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Wall of Honor, so these numbers are not coming from some partisan website trying to create a narrative. According to ICE's own records, 29 personnel have died in the line of duty since the agency was created in 2003. 29. Now compare that with the number of people ICE has killed, including both Americans and non-citizens living in the United States, just within the last year. And this is where the numbers become especially important, because the recorded causes of death show that the overwhelming majority of those line-of-duty deaths were connected to illnesses rather than violent confrontations. COVID-19 accounted for roughly half of those deaths, followed by illnesses connected to 9/11, medical events, and accidents, while only a very small number were attributed to criminal violence or hostile actions. In fact, only 2 agents have been intentionally killed by criminal suspects or assailants since 2003. 2. Just 2. Yet we are supposed to accept Scott Jennings' dramatic portrayal of ICE as an agency that is constantly under attack and facing an unprecedented level of deadly violence. These masked thugs, as I would describe them, were not always wearing masks, but in my view, they have always behaved like thugs. So when Scott Jennings presents this highly dramatic picture of ICE agents supposedly facing an extraordinary wave of deadly violence, the available numbers simply do not appear to support the story he is telling. Now let's hear what Bakery Sellers has to say.
Yes, because we're not training them adequately. We're not even training them adequately, and now we're going to give them a new weapon and give them shock gloves? What could go wrong?
The culture has changed simply because we're seeing mothers being separated from their children. We're seeing masked agents come into communities where they're not even telling you who they are or showing you their badges. You're talking about people being run over by cars. And what you're seeing is ICE agents actually put themselves in the line of danger. And if you talk to the Seth Stoutons or the Jeffrey Alperts or these experts in law enforcement training, et cetera, they will tell you that a law enforcement officer should never put themselves in the line of danger. When you're talking about Preddy and you're talking about Renee Good, were they murdered? The answer is yes. The fact is they were murdered in the street. And, the answer that we probably cannot agree on is, what was it? Malice aforethought, all those things. But we can probably agree that they should still be alive today. And we can probably agree that whatever crime they committed was not a death penalty crime, if in fact they committed a crime at all. The culture of ICE has changed. And the problem is ICE has no leadership. I don't blame those officers on the street. I blame the fact that there is absolutely no leadership at ICE. No one who has the fortitude to make sure that you have a culture, rules in place. And then if we want to talk about policy, we could talk about qualified immunity and how that's run amok. So you have officers doing the BS that these officers are doing. You know what that officer did? That officer escalated the situation. That's what that was. That's not protecting yourself.
Just reminded those shootings are still under investigation.
Gun in a woman's
Oh, wait, they're not murders? Is that what you're saying, Lulu?
I'm saying that there.
We've got a bunch of people here that have already passed judgment.
I think if you watch the video,
just watched on camera was alarming, and I think there's going to be a full investigation. We're going to see what went awry. I agree with Scott. We need body cam footage, but just one time, I would love to hear about a far scarier incident. In the last 24 hours, we learned that Todd Stewart was murdered by an illegal immigrant who was let out by a California judge who had already committed a crime. Why is there never a segment or footage shown of American citizens who are killed By illegal,
We should be targeting illegal aliens who commit crimes. I agree.
So
and that's what the Trump administration said that they were going to do. But then we're deporting people who are law-abiding citizens, or not citizens, but law-abiding residents who are contributing. They're contributing to their community. They're contributing to their community. And it said those are the people they're targeting. And then innocent Americans are getting caught in the crosshairs.
I mean, there's two things here. First of all, there is a credibility gap with ICE. I mean, we have seen the government and ICE themselves and the agents say that things have happened that are then shown not to have happened. We have seen that in many, many instances. I mean, look here. A man shot by ICE agent in Minneapolis was charged with aggravating assault. And then, of course, that didn't turn out to be the case. There was that other case where
the shovel case. You're talking about the shovel case.
It wasn't just the shovel case. There are ones over and over and over again. And it seems that there is a tactic where some of these officers, some of these agents are saying things that are not true. And the Trump administration is backing them up before there is any evidence to the contrary. And so what we see in polling now is that something that the president was very, very, very strong on. People supported his immigration objectives. He is now underwater on that issue because of what has happened in places
because
like
they've gone too far. And I agree that body cam footage would be great if we're actually enforcing it when law enforcement uses it and doesn't use it. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to always be the case with ICE when they seem to, we just didn't happen to have our body cameras on. And it cuts both ways. It would incentivize law enforcement to act better, but it would also make the case for if that use of force was necessary. So we need to be enforcing it and holding these people accountable when they're not. But there doesn't seem to be accountability there.
Actually, in some of the cases you mentioned, I know in the shovel case, you're right. The officers didn't tell the truth. And then the agency immediately admitted it and they moved on disciplinary proceedings after they realized. So there was a story. It was a bad story. It was a false story.
And then it was repeated at the highest levels of the Trump administration.
I'm trying to agree with you. Okay. Then the agency said, we looked into this. The officers didn't tell the truth. And then the White House and the upper levels of ICE said, yes, this was a mistake, and we're moving on them on disciplinary. That's what they should have done.
Has the White House ever apologized for calling Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist?
They're having hundreds of thousands of interactions across the country. It is unreasonable to assume that 100% of them are going to go smoothly and swimmingly. And it's also unreasonable to assume that the police are at fault in every single one. But that seems to be what we do around here.
I mean, everybody knows that
the White House, though, prematurely call him a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, that turned out not to be true.
I wouldn't, if I were in their shoes, but I would not prejudge or pre-describe anything, particularly when you don't have body cam. Now, after you get body cam footage and you're going to have instant evidence, I guess we can all hop on our jump to conclusions mats with a little bit more stability. But in these cases where you don't know, and in this case we just played, you don't know what happened before that interaction. Maybe she did get too close to them with a car. You don't know that yet.
Well, thank God she was filming it at least, because we don't know if there will be body cam.
And you only have her footage. You have a clipped piece of it.
Basically, in order to buy Scott's defense, you would have to ignore what everybody knows, which is that they set up this ICE system in a hurry with billions of dollars by hiring thousands of unqualified people and not denying them the proper training to do that job, and then giving them these quotas for arrests and let them loose on these communities in a systematic way. The direction came from the top. The system was designed from the top, and it functioned as designed, which was to terrorize these communities.
Are you arguing?
And everybody knows that. And the abuses are a predictable and predicted outcome of that system from the very beginning, and everybody knows that.
You're arguing that everybody who's been hired is unqualified.
You
said it. You said thousands are
unqualified, but there's hundreds of thousands. Well, I would love for those records.
I think we've seen the video evidence that shows that they're unqualified.
We need more.
Not following proper procedure tactics.
We need a lot of law enforcement to identify themselves.
If we go back to the video, I can tell you that the officer who pointed the gun at this young lady is unqualified. I can tell you that the black guy who came in from the side and yelled at this young lady, although he wasn't a part of the incident, unqualified.
Undertrained.
Undertrained. I mean, I can literally look at the video and discuss and articulate what the issue is.
People wanted immigration
to no immigration enforcement.
No, people wanted immigration enforcement.
Josh Rogan is calling out what he sees as the strawman argument coming from Scott Jennings, and honestly, that seems to be one of the main tactics MAGA commentators keep relying on. Instead of dealing directly with the strongest points being made against them, they often seem to create a weaker version of the opposing argument and then attack that instead. Scott Jennings has built a reputation as someone who consistently defends the people in power, and that is why his appearances can feel less like an open debate and more like a determined effort to protect a position he has already chosen. That is also why I think it is important when people like Sarah Matthews, Josh Rogan, and bakery sellers push back and refuse to simply let those arguments go unanswered. Seriously, when is the last time you watched Scott Jennings make a point and thought, you know what, Scott Jennings is completely right here, he is being honest, he is making a fair argument, and I genuinely understand where he is coming from? When does that actually happen? This guy is constantly appearing on Abby Phillips' show, he shows up on other CNN programs all the time, and I even saw him earlier today on another CNN program. At this point, Scott Jennings has become a familiar example of what a bad faith argument can look like, where the goal appears to be less about having an honest conversation and more about defending whatever position he has already decided to defend. Josh Rogan, Bakery Sellers, and Sarah Matthews are right to question the behavior of these ICE agents and to raise concerns about whether some of them are abusing their authority. When masked law enforcement officers are operating without clear identification or obvious accountability, that can create an even bigger problem for the public because people deserve to know who is exercising government authority over them. There are certainly bad actors within traditional law enforcement as well, but the concerns surrounding ICE can become even more serious when transparency and accountability are difficult to establish. If Democrats take control during the midterms, there will be plenty of issues they need to confront, and unfortunately, I am not convinced they will be fully prepared for everything waiting for them. But reforming ICE should absolutely be part of that discussion. I do not think ICE is simply going to disappear completely, because that is probably unrealistic, but there should be serious reforms designed to increase accountability and transparency. At the very least, agents should be clearly identifiable and should have visible badge numbers so members of the public can know exactly who they are dealing with. That would not solve every problem, but it would be a reasonable place to start. And you already know Scott Jennings would probably object the moment those changes were proposed, bringing up Biden and asking, "What about Biden?" But that is exactly the kind of response we have come to expect from him. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with Scott Jennings and his arguments on Abby Phillips' show, or do you side with Bakery Sellers, Sarah Matthews, and Josh Rogan and believe ICE needs much greater accountability and transparency? Let me know where you stand, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe.